Whatever research will do at this point of time is stop you from making a bad product. You'll be good, you'll be decent, you'll never be great.
Why do you think so? Research is so essential at that time, which should not be only led by product managers and the product designers.
Research never makes good products. So all the products are looking at building a habit. Doing behavioral research is not really expected to be expensive. AI is good as a companion. In an early stage startup, that is not often the case. Products are moving from a 1 to 10, not at a 0 to 1. For 0 to 1, it's all chaos.
How one should understand users' mental model.
Welcome to another episode. Today I'm excited to host Arvind Chandrashekar, a director of UX research at Glance, and before he was a head of UX research at InMobi. Arvind is a distinguished researcher and published author with over 15 years of experience. At Glance, he's transformed the user research practice, growing it from a solo operation to a dynamic team of 6 researchers overseeing multiple product lines across 6 major geographies. His distinctive approach combines a deep understanding of behavioral economics with self-taught expertise in neuroscience, bringing unique insights into user behavior and decision-making heuristics. In this episode, we dive into simple ways for startups to conduct behavior research, understanding user mental models without primary research, why PMs or designers shouldn't lead research in growth stage, best practices for PM or designers in user research, AI's role in automating research tasks, and lights on his research have shaped product strategy from scratch. If you are building digital products, this episode reveals how to leverage users' mental models to deliver the right solutions and also how to make it work internally. Don't forget to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and YouTube. Your support helps us bring in more inspiring and insightful conversation to help you learn from leaders. Let's jump in and hear from Arvind.
Hey Arvind, thanks for joining today. It's a pleasure having you.
Pleasure's all mine. Pretty excited to have this conversation with you. So
Great. Uh, Arvind, let's start with uh, purely focusing on startups who are in early or let's say a mid stage. It's not fair that they do not pay attention to user research, considering there are also attention requires, conversion requires, need to understand the user and lots of things, right? But because of the bandwidth they have, right, efforts also get limited sometime. Considering that, if a person in the company needs to start understanding a user's behavior, how should they go about it?
So it's interesting that you did mention bandwidth and how it's split and what we generally call it as the bandwidth paradox. The more a product grows or matures, the more the less time people have to actually do dedicated work, which is foundational and sort of is provides a directional understanding of whether something is going right or wrong.
Right.
You know, uh, and that is oftentimes overlooked primarily because it seems it's that marshmallow test. You're not getting instant gratification just because you've known what people like or don't like or what appeals and what doesn't appeal.
Right.
It's not an immediate feedback loop. It sort of is building your knowledge base, which gets utilized at a later point of time. It's a lot like school education. You don't really know as to why you're learning algebra and trigonometry. But as you grow old, you figure out these tricks and heuristics where,
Why were those chapters
yeah,
in the
those
school time?
shortcuts. Yeah. You don't really quite understand why you had to learn dates of, Battle of Panipat and first battle and second battle and whatnot. And I still don't know, but it usually comes up as a good conversation. There are all these little trivias and tidbits that people tend to gather because that immediate feedback and that immediate gratification of saying, hey, I learned something interesting and this totally, makes total sense for my product to actually incorporate this or sort of this doesn't seem to be working. We need to junk in and we need to sort of relook at this problem
Right.
is not immediate, and also a lot of people also tend to sort of overlook the different levels of comprehension that people have, so even if a team of product managers and designers are
Right.
engaging with a bunch of users,
Hmm.
not all of them are comprehending what the user is trying to convey the same way.
Right.
There are varying levels.
Absolutely.
And most of the times, the debrief, doesn't really happen because people tend to go away with different varying sort of opinions and understandings.
And maybe the insights you get out of the entire exercise may also differ from people
Yeah,
to people.
yeah. Which is why it's very important to establish the baselines and the processes to be followed.
Hmm.
It is important for people to have a common set of questions that they are going to tackle. Different people may have different agendas as to why they are engaging with a user and
User.
trying to understand, but they need to understand, if the user has said something interesting,
Right.
which of these two guys are gonna take the lead and sort of go forth.
Hmm.
A product manager may want to understand why certain things are happening. What makes you want to come back and
Correct.
engage with it. What incentive are you getting? Like,
Hmm.
what is it in it for you as a user to come back?
So the goal a product manager sets in the exercise, and sometimes also product designer sets for the exercise, may also differ.
Yeah.
So when you are planning out the research, you have to be aligned on the same table.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it may go on a wrong
Yeah,
direction.
yeah. And coming back to the initial question of people sort of not spending too much on time, is primarily because it's usually considered as a linear process, or it's delegated. A
Hmm.
product manager will come to a designer who is also expected to carry out research and say, hey, listen, this is a problem, go figure it out.
Figure it out. Yeah. Yeah.
This is the problem I have spent, and this is the 2-line or a 3-line brief. This is the challenge for you, go figure it out.
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know the context, the surrounding context, and how that problem statement was distilled and condensed before being passed on is
Hmm.
often not shared. So
Yeah. Yeah.
already the context is
Very less.
very less and very different.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's almost like there are information gatekeeping which happens,
Right.
where people tend to say, this information is above your pay grade, so
Hmm.
let's stick with what you can work with and what will help you execute.
Right.
And that usually happens, because in an early stage startup, that is not often the case. You start to see the early feeds of that germinating when products are moving from a 1 to 10, not at a
Right.
0 to 1. Because 0 to 1, it's all chaos.
Exactly.
Everybody's trying to sort of get things moving, get the product market fit,
Product market fit. Yeah, of course.
get the GTM, all of that sorted out. So
Hmm.
it's all hands on deck. There is no room for egos. There is no room for gatekeeping and marking territories and whatnot. 1 to
Hmm.
10 is where things get interesting.
Right.
You
Right.
have something that seems to be working.
Hmm. Hmm.
There are people who want to push the envelope, and
Hmm.
then there are people who believe, if it's not broken, let's not touch anything, let's
Touch
not do
anything.
anything.
Yeah. And I believe that's also not a functional requirement the 0 to 1 product has. Because at that time, they might be more interested in to figure out the solution right for the problem statement.
It's all about the velocity with which teams are
Functioning.
functioning and are comfortable functioning in.
Hmm.
0 to 1, you and is almost synonymous with hustle.
Absolutely.
And when you're hustling, speed is of essence.
Hmm.
You cannot be sitting on a problem statement for weeks and months trying to, you know, seeking inspiration, saying lightning bolt will come and hit me.
Right. Right.
That is usually the case. Things tend to settle down in a 1 to 10. So there's a lot more time for marinating in, the little voices people have in their heads.
Then how one should understand users' mental model? Because if we start to do a behavioral research with a limited resources, as you said, right, there are often times that team do not pay attention to mental agenda that they have in
Hmm.
mind, and many a times that happens that whatever users saying, and when they are acting on your product is completely different. So once you crosses the 0 to 1 journey and starts the 1 to 10
Hmm.
journey, that is the right time for you to pay attention to not just behavior side of a user, but the mental side of the user as well. Otherwise, you will not able to untap the potential of the product.
It is. I mean, if you look at the last 5 years
Hmm.
of all the apps and all the digital products, or even, regular tangible products that have come into the market, they're all
Hmm.
looking at creating a habit.
Absolutely, yeah.
Habit formation is now, it's what innovation and disruption was in the mid 2000s.
Now
Habit
it's
formation is the same,
right now.
trend line, right?
Hmm.
So all the products are looking at building a habit,
Hmm.
and building a habit is basis behaviors.
Hmm. Hmm.
A habit is not something that you do occasionally.
Hmm. Hmm.
A
Correct.
habit is something that you do almost on a daily basis, or as part of your daily ritual, a
Unconsciously.
weekly ritual.
Absolutely.
What people tend to overlook is the fact that doing behavioral research is not really expected to be expensive. All one needs to do is actually pay attention.
Okay.
You
If you
you
can drive with some examples.
Yeah, so you don't really have to say, you know, hire an agency, set up a whole incentive program, how you're gonna be meeting these users, recruitment costs, field costs, your logistical
Everything around it.
issues, all of that. Uh, Oftentimes, all you need to do is just listen to people online. There's so much chatter going on.
Hmm.
you know you can just start off a conversation on your social listening post, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's X or Twitter, Reddit, whatever it is. There's Even before you engage in a conversation, if you just do a simple search of what people are talking about,
Hmm. Hmm.
you will learn to realize that there's a clear demarcation between what is a symptom and
Hmm.
what people are really trying to explain.
Hmm. Hmm.
And because these are vibrant conversations
And which is beyond your
where,
quantitative analytics.
yeah, it literally, you get to become a fly on the wall, where you get to hear people's unfiltered thoughts.
Hmm.
In a more traditional setup, people often become very polite. They don't want to offend, they want to sort of carry out a lot of self censorship.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
in a anonymous forum,
Right.
it is,
Right.
which is also the case as to why there's so much of outrage. A lot of people say a lot of things, but it's
And
an
there,
unfiltered response.
absolutely. And there they will try to be more authentic
Yeah.
than sugar coated.
Yeah, like if you want to call an unfiltered, verbal
Unfiltered.
diarrhea as sorts as being authentic, yeah, sure, that's the case. It is important, especially in a 1 to 10
Hmm.
product, to understand behavior,
Hmm.
primarily because now people think of this as almost like the first opening weekend of a movie. You're 0 to 1.
Correct. Correct.
There is, people will go watch it,
Hmm.
and either they will diss it,
Yeah. Yeah.
or they will say, you know what, it's actually pretty good.
Hmm. Hmm.
If it's great, there will be more than enough word of mouth. You will reach that mass tipping point where people start coming in,
Absolutely.
right? 1 to 10 is almost similar to a movie producer wanting the audiences to come in week on week.
Hmm. Hmm. Consistently.
It's consistently,
Hmm.
people who have seen like 4 times, 5 times, want to come back. When it comes on TV, you want to sit and watch it again,
Again. Yeah.
because there are certain scenes or there are certain songs that you don't mind watching it again and again.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of that comes in when people sort of understand the behavior. They've answered the why
Hmm.
people like it,
Absolutely.
but now to sort of build things on it, it's almost like an extended cut. When a DVD, or at least when DVDs used to come out, they always used to come out with these bonus features.
Huh.
So you've heard the songs,
Yes. Yes.
it's always playing on radio, but for
Hmm.
the reason for you to buy a DVD and listen to it is because of these additional bits.
Hmm. Hmm.
There are a lot of these distinctions that people tend to sort of overlook
Hmm.
in that aspect. It's not universal. There are just these pockets where people get sort of pushed into a corner because they are looking at a completely execution first
Hmm.
model sort of a
Hmm.
thing. They are not. Um, I'm not sure if you've noticed this, but of late, at least in my circles, what I've noticed is there's a growing trend of solving for the here and now.
Okay.
So if a problem exists, let's say there's a sudden drop in engagement, or
Hmm.
there is there people have noticed that the week on week there seems to be a churn in your daily
So patterns
user
started
base.
happening, let's say.
People are looking at a duct tape measure.
Hmm. Hmm.
People are trying to say, why is this happening? Oh, notifications, we're bombarding too many you're sending out too many notifications, let's clamp them,
Hmm. Hmm.
till we sort of arrest this,
Correct.
right? But you're not really understanding as to why people are getting annoyed by too many notifications,
Hmm.
or what fundamental change needs to happen.
So you are just focusing on what input is going and what output is coming, but the process in between is something where you need to
Yeah, so you're
focus
not
on,
you're not thinking as to what happens 6 months down the line.
just because of that input.
Yeah, you're not thinking about, okay, sure, I've made this duct tape measure,
Hmm.
but the reasons as to why you started bombarding notifications,
That also has to be clear
that
and
that yeah
rationalized.
that gets put in the backlogs.
Absolutely.
6 months down the line, you're still staring at the same problem.
Hmm. Hmm.
The reason as to why you started with an increased notification campaign.
Correct. Correct.
You like Zomato probably sends you, I think, 3 notifications now
A day.
a day,
Hmm.
right? When they started, it was a lot more.
And compared to in the same segment, if you think about Zerodha per se,
Yeah,
it's just maybe 12, 15 in total notification
yeah,
in a year.
yeah. It is important for you to sort of understand how does this feature or this particular growth channel
Hmm.
evolves 6 months down the line, how scalable it is.
Hmm.
If you're building something here and now, it's raining, you find a polythene cover, you cover your head, but you
Right.
cannot do this in monsoon.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You're taking an action for the here and now because you're caught in the rains.
Hmm. Hmm. But it should not be the
But you're
solution
not
for
taking into account that it's monsoon season and it's
true.
probably better for us to invest in an umbrella or just get a raincoat.
Hmm. Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know
Hmm.
that requires uh, a lot of alignment, a lot of people to sort of buy into this long term plan and vision, and it requires that narrative to be socialized a lot more rather than in small pockets.
Small pockets, small cohorts.
Yeah,
And
not just with your growth teams, or just your design teams, or your product teams.
hmm.
It cannot just be self contained.
Hmm.
It needs to permeate, because you don't know the path towards it. You know the journey, like the
Right.
destination,
Hmm.
and you want to ensure that everybody is excited to go to Goa, for New Year's,
For New Year's,
right?
absolutely.
How do you want to go? Different people will have different ideas,
But the
right? And
destination is clear.
everybody should be clear. Nobody should say, Goa is overrated.
Yeah. Yeah. Because once
Let's
you have
not do Goa, let's look at something else. And we will always have those voices who
absolutely.
say, yeah, no, not Goa. We do Goa every year. Let's not do Goa this year. Let's look at something else.
Huh.
And there will always be dissenting voices, and they should be,
Hmm.
because that lets you articulate and be even more clear as to why you want to do something.
No, I think you put up a really interesting point. Many product folks even also realize that the analytics is the best place, even for the early stage startup to understand the user, right? But it's not just about the data that you have. It's also about the sentiment you have built across product and the overall online
Hmm.
marketplaces as well, right?
One of the things that I've been, when I was, young, I used to be annoyed into the fetishization of numbers and how people used to be swayed more easily and persuaded if you throw numbers and say X%, you know, is positive, or Q
Negative or
percent is
something.
negative or whatever. People will take note. Like the numbers stick in people's head, But if you say, hey, you know, people are not liking it, that never used to sell. There was always used to be some pushback. And one of the things that I've realized is now that people are, because of all of this, people have turned numbers first. They like to look at dashboards, they like to look at Power BI, whatever else, and Excels and analytics and funnels and
Right.
whatnot. They have a narrative. And this is what I like to call it the cold narrative, because you're just looking
Okay.
at numbers. There are no human faces. You don't quite understand if people have clicked on your app, downloaded it, opened it, looked at the onboarding screen, and then exited.
Yeah, that will
You know,
definitely create a list of numbers.
yeah, it basically looks like a funnel. It
Funnel.
literally is a funnel,
Huh.
right? Now, the joy of doing good research is having a warm narrative, is where you look at these numbers and you have a story of saying, okay, so the user came in,
Right.
saw the onboarding screen, and realized what he saw and read on the Play Store is not
Not
what
the
is
same.
being delivered on the onboarding screen. We seem to be making a lot more harder sell and Play Store or vice versa or something. There's some level of dissonance which exists, which is causing this behavior, right? Now,
Right.
suddenly that number makes a lot more sense. And these numbers now stick. Now you have a reason as to why these numbers look the way they are,
Right. Right.
and that is a increasing culture in a lot of companies.
And I also perceive this as numbers are easy to process, but if it's not generating insights out of it, it doesn't really add a value. If user have came from a Play Store to the application, they have installed it, right? They have started onboarding, they came to the place, they even saw a couple of products of yours, right? And then they thought that this is not something that the offer was running on the Play Store, let's say. Then they just dropped off. But they understood that the offer that they were came there for is not there, will not be communicated in the funnel if you see. Because in the funnel, you will just get to see that number of clicks on the Play Store, number
Yeah,
of onboarding
yeah,
happen, and number of drop off happen, but not a real reason behind why that really happened. So the
fair.
insights associated to that entire process is something that people are not
I'll
really
I'll
able to see.
I'll 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 give you an even better example, and this is
Please.
something which is um, pretty unique, and it probably started in the Southeast Asian markets, which is apps getting preloaded on people's phones,
Okay.
right? I think it started off with Google doing its own thing, because
Huh.
Google, right? So YouTube and Maps and everything
When you
else.
basically take a new phone,
Yeah,
that
it's
time
it's there, right? And you're quite happy with it because you think that's part of the setup,
setup, yeah,
right?
yeah.
Then you started seeing Facebook. You started seeing,
WhatsApp.
WhatsApp. You started seeing share chat, Moj. You started seeing, individual OEMs pushing in their own apps, right?
By default.
Now, if you are a product manager building these products, right? Facebook, WhatsApp makes sense because they already have, it's now part of a utility setup,
Absolutely.
right? But let's take the example of, say, Moj or share chat, right? Where they are preloaded on devices. People are clicking on it primarily because of curiosity,
Why
right?
it's preloaded in the first place?
Yeah, like, what is this?
Hmm. Hmm.
I've got a new phone, so I'm already in this exploration thing saying, let me see what my new toy is capable of
Absolutely.
doing.
Yeah.
There's a fair amount, and we've done enough studies for us to now understand that from the, so let's say if today is a Monday, you get a brand new phone, you spend the next 20 days setting it up, right? The intensity is super high in the first 7 days. You install a lot of apps. You sort of
Customize the
you
phone the way
customize
you
a lot.
want.
Yeah, you sort of change ringtones. You change wallpapers. You change the
Number of things.
the icons which are present on your
Home
home
screen.
screen and all of that. Right. That begins to taper from, I think, the ninth and the 10th day. That sort of frequency comes down. Now, if you're a preloaded app, an app that already exists, what point of this 20-21 day journey should you be present in for you to become part of that exploration?
Right.
Why is it that some apps get treated as bloatware and some apps we say, yeah, this is part of the phone?
Right.
We never question YouTube
For being preloaded.
for being preloaded, right? We never question why WhatsApp or Facebook is preloaded. But we question why, Moj or ShareChat or any of the other payment apps or like Samsung Pay is there.
I didn't even have asked for it.
Yeah. You sort of make this decision after you have understood what it is.
But having said that, isn't this considered to be a light dark pattern or something like that?
It
In
is.
some way?
So, like I said, I mean, if you are not part of the digital ecosystem, right? Like the digital payment ecosystem. Let's say you don't have a UPI or whatever, right?
Right.
And you've just traveled from outside of India. You're a non-Indian, non-resident Indian sort of a thing.
You
And
haven't been into India.
let's say you've been living under a rock and you've just come back and you've been sort of given this matrix style knowledge upload, and you've been given a Samsung phone. Just for example, no, nothing against Samsung. Quite like their phones.
Very first experience.
And you are obviously sort of exploring, and you see Samsung Pay. You open it, and you sort of see things, and you see other people sort of using, scanning QR codes and tapping and whatnot. Because you don't have a reference point, and because your entry barriers are low, it's quite possible that you sort of make it part of that. Your network effects haven't kicked in.
True.
Your dark pattern comes in when you are trying to manipulate the network effect to your own advantage, or you are trying to generate network effect. TikTok is a big player because they sort of did a lot of this behind the scene. And it's a fascinating story in terms of how TikTok sort of got scale, at least in China. They used to pay retailers X number of dollars to sort of ensure that these apps are preloaded. They used to pay the retailers and not the OEMs for these apps to get preloaded. Now, enough number of people have started using it. They found the content funny enough, and they've started sharing, within TikTok or outside of TikTok.
Right.
So these patterns exist. They are a growth lever. And anybody who knows me knows that I do not really have any morals, so I don't really see a light pattern or dark pattern. Largely, I view it as a problem solving thing, and it's all about who's asking the question, who's posing this as a problem, and who's complaining. If it's a business thing, I understand. Yeah, makes sense. If it's the user, I also understand what you're saying.
Correct.
And there is always a sweet spot to hit.
It should have been solved contextually.
Yeah. Like
it can't be generalized.
People, you would be surprised as to how much people sort of underestimate and overlook the power of context. And context is everything.
Everything.
Context matters more than anything else. So
sometimes the problem that you see may not be relevant as a problem if you do not set up the context right way.
Yeah. I mean, there's been more than enough scientific studies which have sort of, explored the entire aspect of priming and anchoring and framing and all of those. And they're all about context.
All about context, absolutely.
I think the entire stream of behavioral economics and behavioral science is based on understanding and setting context.
Absolutely. All the experiment has a first context setting, and then only the exercise plays.
Like nobody is gonna understand Titanic if you drop them right at the interval. You know, you need to know who Jack is, who Rose is, for you to actually feel the pain when,
Huh.
Rose refuses to let Jack on board, when clearly there was enough space for two. But apart from that, context is everything. You need to have that background, you need to have that history, which is why I said, you probably, at some odd reason, you probably need to know the three battles of Panipat and when it happened. You
Correct,
just
correct.
don't know where and how and why that thing. But yeah, context is supreme. So
Great, Arvind. So help us understand, once you move from the 0 to 1, 1 to 10 journey, you comes to the growth stage. And at the growth stage, there are lots of things will be happening significantly, rapid experiments, rapid feature launch, and things like that. Why do you think so? Research is so essential at that time, which should not be only led by product managers and the product designers.
the growth stage is ideally, at least personally, I define it to be a place where you wanna get the maximum ROI on your investment.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the least amount of effort.
Hmm.
You want to ensure that you are leveraging all the hard work that you put in making that product from 0 to 1. Now you want to sort of capitalize on that.
On
You know,
that, yeah.
what usually happens during that period of time is because you're, like you rightly mentioned, you're doing so many things. It's very easy for individual biases to kick in.
Hmm.
Whether you're a designer or a product manager, it's very easy for your biases to kick in. It's very easy to find your focus to be fragmented and split across multiple things.
Hmm.
And you sort of, and as a result of this, what really happens is whatever is being, sent to your devs or your engineering team is a lot of wasted effort, because you're experimenting a lot and you're not really sure in terms of what it's going to sort of have a
Work or
return
not.
on.
Hmm. Hmm.
you know uh, I know for a fact that there is a school of thought which exists which says ship, iterate, ship.
Hmm.
you know but if you can reduce that shipping cost,
Hmm. Hmm.
and reduce the number of iterations you carry out,
Correct.
it is still, at least in my head, part of your growth journey.
Is the fundamentals that you have set for the
Yeah,
optimization.
it is like the elders say, penny saved is penny earned.
Correct.
Not every single penny or money that or dollar that comes into the account actually means that you're making a profit or you are growing.
Absolutely.
A lot of it is
Of
mostly
this,
to sort of recover the losses that have been sort of, you've been, burning the cash through. uh,
definitely.
so research, because of its rootedness and because of its almost singular nature,
Hmm.
and because researchers are sort of equipped to have that, unbiased approach to problem solving.
Hmm. Hmm.
A good researcher is a really great translator. you know
Can you elaborate a
um,
bit?
so a good researcher is not expected to sort of report back what users are saying,
Hmm.
but they are expected to translate what users are saying and not saying. you
True.
know
Hmm.
a lot of it is about translating it in a manner that a PM will understand,
Hmm.
translating it the same thing in a different manner, in a manner that designer understands.
Hmm.
And the dev team is also sort of interested to know, why am I building this? Because when they are grooming, engineers have a lot of questions. And you know
Right.
because one of the most, I'm not sure if cute is the right word, but it is one of the cutest things is to see an engineer, a young budding engineer placing himself as a user.
Hmm.
But because he has to build this product, he's also trying to figure out how to sort of make his life easier.
Absolutely.
So there are these contradictions, and we are all a bundle of contradictions. Now, as long as that bundle of contradictions does not make its way into the product,
Hmm.
and the product is not reflective of the collective ignorance and assumptions and hypotheses that the team has had,
Right. Right.
uh, that is where research can come in. You don't want to be embarrassed in a public forum. You rather would be want to be embarrassed or be taken aside.
Internally.
It's almost like, if you got a fly down on your pants, you want to be taken aside by your friend and say, pull up your zip. Your zip is down. You don't want to be told in a bus saying zip is down.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be a well-intentioned
Right.
thing, but now you're embarrassed because this complete public.
Number of eyeballs on
Yeah,
the situations, let's
correct.
say.
And the cost of it is huge.
But having said that, then what you rightly put is how it's being communicated internally is also making a lot of sense.
Yeah.
What should good researcher do in order to curate the right insights and make sure at the same time that it's being delivered rightly internally to all the teams, not just limited to product and design? Because as you said that, my tech team also wants to know why I'm really doing
Yeah.
this. So if they have those handy insights, it will be the right answers for them.
One of the valid and good reasons as to why research has had such a bad rep in recent years, I think, especially post COVID, when the entire layoff tsunami sort
Started
of started.
happening.
I think research was the biggest affected functions globally.
Globally.
And this was primarily because somewhere down the line, people understood empathy,
Hmm.
and they understood that you got to be empathetic towards the user and what the user is saying.
Hmm.
You know, if you're a translator, or you're one of those dumb and deaf translators,
Hmm. Hmm.
who's trying to sort of communicate to people, hearing impaired sort of people, you have to be empathetic to the person who is talking,
Hmm.
and you have to be empathetic to the person to whom you are translating it to.
Right.
I've noticed, or what I had noticed, was that researchers were taking an almost activist stance in saying users want this and you guys are not doing this and you really need to do this.
Hmm.
But that level of empathy never translated, inwards and internally, saying, why is my PM,
Not understanding the
yeah,
simple
like,
thoughts, let's say.
what is his KPI? Like, what is he looking to achieve? You know,
That's so interesting. Cause many a times we think that user researcher's job is to understand just users. It's not limited to that. If you
again, okay, so for me, I'm very passionate about research.
Hmm.
So whether it's user research, cultural research, whatever it is, as long as I'm getting paid to be annoying and ask questions,
Right.
I'm happy. Put whatever label you want to put on it, right?
I still
Uh,
remember our first
yeah.
conversation. You.
So for me, it's, if I'm a researcher, research is my product.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
anybody and everybody is a user of research.
True. True.
I'm almost like a marketplace. If users are my supply side, product and design is my demand
Demand
side.
side. Yeah.
As a marketplace, I need to be just,
Balance both the
and
entities.
yeah, and manage both their expectations.
Hmm.
When a user sort of complains saying, I don't understand why this is needs to be so complicated.
Hmm.
All I need to do is just XYZ.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I need to do this, I need to go after so many screens just to sort of do this simple exercise, in the most abstract of all manners.
Right. Right.
Now, if you don't understand as to why that particular thing was built in that manner,
Hmm.
and you're just going back and saying, listen, people are super annoyed that they have to carry out 7 clicks to do this X activity,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's why it is getting reflected in your funnels and whatnot,
Metrics. Huh.
whatever it is, that's just a one-sided conversation.
Hmm.
Researchers also grumble about nobody taking their recommendations seriously. Researchers also say that, oh, we give our recommendations, but nobody seems to care. And,
Hmm.
people don't even read our reports, and nobody, bothers to, pay attention during debrief, is because you're not really saying things that matter to them.
Hmm. Hmm. Can you elaborate with some examples where user research insights would have influenced product strategy?
One of the things that initially, one of the many, many incubated startups that InMobi had in its wings was this um, under the radar sort of a team called Swish. And we were looking to explore US as a market,
Okay.
US Android as a market,
Hmm.
right? Um, One of the things that the easiest thing for us to do at that point of time was to do a news product,
Hmm.
right? But news is a super crowded marketplace in US.
Yes. Hmm.
Every day, everywhere, you're surrounded with news, whether you like it or not. From your social media to TV to radio, everywhere, anywhere.
Even on
It's
billboards out there,
everywhere.
everywhere.
Yeah, Times Square, whatnot. But
Hmm.
it's all news,
Hmm.
right? Now, if you have to make, how do you then differentiate yourself? Sure, you got your distribution channel sorted out, that gives you an edge, but
True.
from a user experience standpoint, it's not really helping you out, right? And one of the things that we kept hearing is that people were there was a small cohort of users who were super kicked about seeing sports news,
Hmm.
delivered to them in whatever shape and form that we were experimenting with, which is now defunct. um, but people were super excited,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that sort of led people to sort of venture out and say, does it make sense for us to look at sports as a separate category and not just have it clubbed as news?
Not in general, but very specific
Yeah,
to
like a
sports.
niche, let's just cater to
Hmm.
people who like reading sports news,
Hmm.
you know. Uh, and in terms of news, we can give them scores, schedule, whatnot. Like anything and everything that is considered as sports news,
Right.
doesn't make sense for us to start work on it as an individual app.
And later on, we can maybe expand
Yeah,
to
like
other
later on,
categories
let's see where it is.
where it
But
goes.
that genesis of an idea stemmed from research. You
Hmm.
know,
Okay.
the entire, and that's also because we were sort of short staffed, and because this was a skunk works sort of a idea that was brewing in a sort of almost a guerrilla, behind the sheds off office hours sort of a workflow and process and team setup. There were not many product managers, so I had to sort of end up doing the product managing for it for those initial, I think, 4 5 months,
Hmm.
before we sort of said, yeah,
Not into
I
it.
have way too much on my plate, and we really need a dedicated product manager to sort of take over on this. But
Okay.
um, a lot of it, all of the decision making, all of the designs, in terms of do we make it plain vanilla? Do we sort of, what sort of things do we focus on? Where do we anchor? What is that one true North Star metric that we want to view as a success or a failure measure?
Hmm.
All of that was completely informed by research.
Okay. Hmm.
For us, from a sports context or in the sense of IPL, I can give you IPL news, right?
True.
uh, but for me, that product is a success when the moment you've selected the team that you want to follow.
Hmm. Correct. Yeah.
If I can get you to give me that preference, and I in turn honor
Hmm.
amongst all the news that I have related with IPL, just because it's a popular and well understood sort of concept. If I can give you your team's news front and center first, above the fold,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
you're kicked.
Yeah.
You're not hearing or reading about other teams' performance and who, you can do that, but
But
you're
I'm not
primarily,
interested into
yeah,
it.
you're invested in your team.
True.
And all of that investment, all of that mental model of you sort of being investing so much of time, energy, emotion, raw emotion in these intangible aspects, made its way into a product.
Correct.
And all of that was sort of guided by research. So in terms of even the future evolution and the scaling and the current set of products that we are working on at Glance uh, stems from key and critical work that research did to sort of validate and sort of work parallelly with the intuition and the innovative thinking that product managers had.
Hmm.
It was a lot of tight coupling work, and it was very difficult to figure out who is the product manager and who's the researcher,
Researcher.
because you're all looking at finding that edge,
Hmm.
trying to steer the course in rough tumbling waters since 2020.
And I think rightly you said in the very early stage of the product visioning as well, research plays a big role
Yeah,
there, I guess, because that's how you are going to take decisions for the product for next 5, 10 years.
yeah.
And if you haven't done that exercise well, you are end up losing a lot
And
of.
this is, I think I was just having this conversation with somebody in office yesterday. And one of the biggest myths,
Hmm.
um, with I think especially designers and people who sort of like to live on the edge, have made, is that it's that famous, I think, and it's a wrongly attributed story of Henry Ford saying, um if I did research, if I had gone and asked customers what do they like, they would have said, I want bigger horses, faster horses.
Uh-huh.
Nobody would have said cars, right? But and that's after the car has been made.
Correct.
If research had been done properly,
Hmm.
and the way, at least how research is done in Glance and in all the other companies that I've worked in, and what I've been taught and disciplined in, is the fact that when done right, the response of bigger horses, faster horses, is a symptom of users wanting something else, because bigger horses and faster horses do not exist. Like,
Correct.
whatever is there is there.
So as we discuss recently, right? It's not just about numbers; it's about insights.
Yeah,
So what you are carrying out from the faster horses
yeah,
is they want speed.
yeah.
They don't care about what the medium that you are going to provide.
Correct. So it's a symptom,
It's
right?
a symptom.
Now, that's the insight. Now, this coupled with somebody at the table thinking, saying, horses is a symptom. What they're really looking for is something big and something fast,
Fast.
right? Is there something that we can do?
Then you would have backtracked the entire
Correct,
thing.
right?
Hmm.
But a lot of times, what happens is the fact that people, and of a lot of startups, especially in the last 15, 20 years, a lot of these startups have emerged from these insights.
Right.
It's just that they have not recognized the sort of guerrilla research that they have done. It's not about somebody suddenly getting stuck with this idea. It's a famous Airbnb story of them, sort of being customers and then being set up with this inspiration. But it's a lot of research that they have carried out. It's just that they've not labeled it as research.
As research. Yeah.
Your quick commerce is again not a result. I don't know the entire history of quick commerce, but I don't believe it is a result of somebody getting saying, hey, people have been asking for next day deliveries. How about we do it in 10 minutes? People would have spoken and realized, saying there are certain items which are super critical and needs immediate delivery,
Right.
over others which probably
I'm
can be
okay
done
for waiting.
overnight. Those insights is how products have been built.
Built.
Now, once a product has been built, you still don't know if you've done justice to that initial insight, or what the user had in mind when they sort of said,
When you have started the product visioning, let's
correct.
say.
You still need to go back, because nothing is perfect. One of my pet theories and hypotheses is the fact that we will never ever know what perfection is, because we don't have a benchmark. So even if we touch perfection, we will always overshoot it, because we think there is something better that we can do.
It's always edge.
It's always on the edge, and yeah, it's like you will never ever which is why I think a lot of artists and designers tend to fret about things, because and they like to keep iterating, and I also sort of understand as to why people like that whole ship and iterate and ship, because it puts a stop. You can keep
Correct.
iterating, you can touch perfection, overshoot and course correct and whatnot, but all of that research helps.
Hmm.
Research and one of the founders in long back, I think couple of years back, had made this offhand remark of saying research never makes good product,
Okay.
right? And he said that research can, even the most ill-advised research, if done right, stops you from making a bad product,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Especially if it's an afterthought. When you build a product, you've not done research, or you've not recognized research and its value and whatnot. You build a product and you say, let's do research now,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Whatever comes, we will
Figure
correct.
it out later.
We will iterate and we'll figure it out, right?
Hmm.
Whatever research will do at this point of time is stop you from making a bad product.
Hmm.
You'll be good, you'll be decent,
Right.
you'll never be great. Great products are built when, like I said, that common vision stems from the very start.
Hmm. Hmm.
When research is not an afterthought.
Correct. Correct.
So when people,
That's one of the
it is
fundamentals.
one of the fundamentals. When you are building something, like if you're building a house for yourself,
Hmm.
if you're not part of that process from day one,
Then it will not be your
the house that you end up building will never ever be a great house. It'll be a good house.
correct.
It's like Taj Mahal. Like if Shah Jahan was not, involved from the very early stages and sort of passing on all of
Which
that.
stones he wants
Yeah,
and which
like the
kind of a structure
perfection,
he
the
wants.
need, all of that, and ensuring that all the labors, and I'm pretty sure it's a horrific story of him, at least the lore has it, of him having cut off the
Their
masoner's
hands.
hands and whatnot. But him having gathered and sort of, shepherded this entire thing is a result.
Absolutely.
And reason as to why a lot of the flats and so much of gentrification in apartments happens is because you are not part of it. You have come in the very end.
Hmm. Hmm.
So an apartment always comes with this, it's a good home. I have a home, it's a good home.
Good home. It's not
but
something that I
but yeah,
really
like
want.
for people who've grown up in villages and who've lived in their own independent houses, sort of a thing, that home feeling, which people tend to complain about, especially when they move to big cities and sort of, in the globalized gentrified world, they sort of always compare, saying that was a great house, like
Correct.
Mahal, the vibes where the ambience was different,
Hmm.
a tree was there, and there's so much of nostalgia because you've been part of it from the very start.
Very start. Yeah.
This is you sort of coming in at the very end.
You are just fulfilling needs here.
Yeah. So
Makes sense. Makes sense, Arvind. Uh, but help us understand one thing, which is pretty crucial, I would say, of having this AI wave right now, uh, which is moving so rapidly, have created lots of products which start automating user research operations in a way by which you can roll out experiments on scale, set the metrics on top, make sure the actions and behavior is also measured. But what are cons of that? Why should someone not adapt those exercises and purely focus on whatever the traditional way of user research that they were doing? So what's the pro of doing this traditional thing and what's the cons of adapting a AI workflows?
I don't know how young your listeners are, and I'm not quite sure if they will understand the Rajesh Khanna mania, but probably let's say BTS for today's generation,
Okay.
right? And I'm pretty sure they probably get a lot of fan mail,
Hmm.
right? AI will help you sift through that volume of data.
Hmm.
It'll help you cluster data. It'll segregate, it'll bucket, it'll categorize,
Hmm.
right? Uh, that's a plus point. So you can do intensely data intensive work
Hmm.
in
Matter of
a
time.
very, very efficient manner. The con is the fact that the reason as to why you would rather, to clear up an understanding, you would rather pick up the phone and speak with somebody or meet with them face to face and discuss, saying, actually, this is not what I was saying, this is what I meant, than typing it out on text.
And predefined questionnaires
No,
for
forget
that.
predefined questionnaires. I'm just saying, like, if you and your friend had a misunderstanding, right? You can meet with them face to face and say, this is not what I meant, this is actually what I meant, and this is what the situation. It's a very different conversation versus you trying to do the same via text message on WhatsApp.
Hmm. Hmm.
You can do that,
Correct.
but there are a lot of nuances which get lost.
Okay.
Right? So AI can synthesize your transcripts. It can even like create. I have seen few AI models which have synthesized reports, like synthesized transcripts, consumed videos, like 100 GBs of videos,
Right.
spewed out, transcripts, done the entire research, end to end research sort of a thing from an analysis point of view. But when I started reviewing the transcripts, reviewing the videos myself, and looking at the output that AI had, because there was a big thrust and it continues to exist, saying, let's adopt AI in any and all sort of workflows. One of the things that we realized is that AI at this point of time is not able to pick up the emotional nuances at scale,
Hmm. Okay.
right? A lot of the silences
What
when
does that really mean?
when people are doing that self-censoring and trying to find the right word, more polite word, rather than sort of using an abusive language which is almost reflex.
Hmm. Hmm.
um,
Hmm. Hmm.
AI sort of ignores that and moves past that. you know
Got it.
uh, AI is a great addition in the
So
tools.
if your task is to understand just navigational behavior, let's say, right, you can do it at a scale with AI. That's not a problem.
No, it's not a problem. Like
But
AI is good as a companion.
right. So where you feel that there is a pattern, let's
AI.
delegate
So
it.
I love the fact that you have this AI thing called Copilot, because that's exactly what AI is supposed to be.
Supposed to be. Yeah.
Right? It's supposed to be a companion. It's supposed to be a co-pilot, but you're still when times comes, you're supposed to take charge.
Check. Check. Good.
You can let it run on auto flight mode, but when time comes to land
Hmm.
and you take off, the two key bits that a pilot is supposed to execute, you do not want to rely on AI.
Absolutely. You have to take charge.
Yeah. So that allows you to free up a lot of things. So yes, AI will help you figure out the navigational bits, but it's just making you make sense. It's not gonna tell you what to do next. Sure, AI can make suggestions, but there's so much of other context that you have that for some odd reason you will not ever be able to communicate to the AI,
Clearly. Huh.
because then like, people are already sick and tired of writing almost, I think, 500 word prompts to get things done, and then revising those prompts to get better outputs.
It's better being done themselves.
Yeah, it's almost like, if you just took the time rather than spending 3 hours trying to figure this out, what prompt to do, you could have probably done this in a different, old school traditional manner. But the other aspect is also the fact that we've come a long way in digitizing things,
Hmm.
but we have a longer way to go to synthesize everything.
Yeah, yeah. Because human is not just about the memory.
Yeah.
It's about the emotions. It's
Yeah,
about the
there's a lot of
feelings,
it.
and
Yeah,
lots of things are there.
there are fair bit of cons, but it's like any other tool. Like it's
Hmm.
fire, it's a knife.
Hmm.
It depends on in terms of who's using it and for what purposes.
Makes sense.
It
Makes sense.
and basically depends on how psychologically sane you are, because a knife and somebody who's sort of unstable is dangerous.
Dangerous.
So
So, Arvind, we came to the very last part of the episode where we ask our guest about what they do really look for when they want to hire someone in their team at a mid level, let's say.
I am currently looking at hiring people, and I am going through oodles and oodles of CVs and case study assignments that we've shared. And the search still continues, primarily because what we look for a few key and critical aspects. One is this innate curiosity.
Hmm.
Um, if you're not curious about things, and if you're going to treat research,
Yeah.
which is, I
Very
believe,
functional as a nature.
I believe is one of the best combinations of play, getting paid for playing.
Hmm.
It's almost akin to you being a professional cricketer or a professional footballer or an athlete and getting paid to play.
Play.
you know and being curious is how you train those muscles.
Hmm. Hmm.
If you're going to be a high level playing athlete, you need to be constantly focusing on maintaining that level and upskilling. If you're at a certain level, you want to always be in form. If a
Hmm.
slump happens, you should know how to sort of break out of that slump and be in
Correct.
form when it so curiosity is that,
Hmm.
for me. It is also really important for the team, because it's whoever the researcher who's going to be joining, or the people who join in middle management, they're going to be joining a team.
Right.
I'm not talking about IC roles. I'm not talking about individual contributor roles. But when somebody is looking to join a team, it is a two-way street. It is a relationship.
Relationship.
I know the
Absolutely.
whole cliched family. I'm not using that family thing, but it is a date.
Hmm. Hmm.
Your interviews are dates. Now, if you as a candidate are not sharing how fun you are and how much fun others around you will have with you being part of the team,
Hmm.
if the fun for the job,
Right. Right.
I'm not talking about a personality hire. I'm talking about somebody who's really good at the job and makes work fun.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's infectious.
Hmm.
So a lot of people do treat research as a job to be done. It's like, a designer who's designing because he's been asked to do,
Hmm.
while he really wants to design something else, but he's got to design these screens, so he's just going to do it. The level of intensity and love and happiness and infectious joy that person is going to have for the thing that he wants to design or she wants to design, versus what approach and attitude that they have towards the task given to them,
Hmm.
is heaven and earth, right?
It's a love for the
Yeah,
craft.
I always look for that intangible, je ne sais quoi, that thing that tells me, saying this person is gonna be absolutely fun
Hmm.
for them. They're not gonna get bogged down by challenges, because startups, even after they go, go IPO or go public, it is always
A startup.
pockets of flux, pockets of chaos. Like, that's where some teams really thrive.
Absolutely.
Some people really look for certainty.
Hmm. Hmm.
We need somebody who just loves either. you
Right.
know if you're happy, so we are looking at people like those. We, over and above your competence, your skill competence and technical competence and all of that, we are looking at people who are happy, and is a state of being. It is asking for a lot. I understand that. And a lot of people, oftentimes I'm told that, what you're describing is nirvana. But uh, if you're content, you're happy, it's infectious. So we are looking at that. We are looking at somebody who is not who understands empathy as a two-way street.
Mhm.
We are not looking at revolutionaries. We are not looking at people saying, hey, users voice needs to be front and center. We need somebody who is empathetic to people they are working with
With daily.
on a daily basis.
Mhm.
If research, the biggest value of a research and a researcher is them going and finding answers for questions which is not a formal research request.
It should come within that. This is
Yeah,
something that I
it's
need
almost
to.
like you saying, if you're my friend and you have a cold, me coming with cough syrup and
Hmm.
saying, apply Vicks, or have this coughlette or whatever it is.
Right.
It's just thing, and you then you're taken aback by the generosity, and
True.
it is
True.
coming from a place of giving.
Hmm.
Researchers need to give. So far we've been taking, and we've been very unhappy with what we've been giving so far, because nobody, we've not taken consideration. It's almost like, if I have to use a very poor analogy, researchers and their research findings so far, they have treated it as a tea set or a bed sheet, at a wedding reception. People
Okay.
get that all the time. Nobody values another tea set,
Right.
another set of Borosil, cookware or whatnot.
Hmm.
If you're giving something thoughtful, that is what differentiates you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think it's time that we started doing that as a function, as research as a function, but be bit more kind to everybody, and just take that extra moment uh, to be happy and make others happy. So
Absolutely. Absolutely, Arvind. That's great to know. And for you guys, in case you have any queries or questions that we haven't covered in this episode and you want to ask to Arvind, let us know in the comment section below. We'll ask Arvind for the same and get it answered for you.
yeah, happy. Like I said, I love really any question. The stupider they are, and stupid again, is the wrong word, but the stupider they are, the more fun they are to find out.
Absolutely.
So yeah, always a pleasure.
Sure. Thank you so much, Arvind,
Thank
for
you,
doing
Darshan.
this. Yeah.
Was a proper pleasure.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Our main goal with this podcast is to bring insightful conversation to help you grow in your career by inviting leaders who are driving impact at scale. If you find this episode useful, make sure you subscribe because that only helps us to invite incredible guests for the future episodes. And in case you have any suggestions about who we should invite and what all topic we should cover, let us know in the comment section below. We are always listening to make sure we deliver exactly what you are looking for.